What's up everybody, I'm Derek, this is Rocking eForge, and today is part 2 of Weird Weapons of History. This week's Weird Weapon of History is a collection of weird weapons from the Roman Empire purported to have been used from about the 5th century BC to about the year 105 AD. This week I will be covering the Dacian Sica, Falx, and the Thracian Rhomphaia. Now, the defining feature and the reason that I chose these weapons as this week's Weird Weapon of History is the unique forward curve of these weapons and the sharpened inside edge of that forward curve. Now, each of these weapons came in different sizes in their respective categories, however, you can break them down into rough, broad categories in and of themselves. The Sica being a typically one-handed weapon, the Falx being a 1- to 2-handed weapon, and the Rhomphaia being a 2-handed weapon almost exclusively. The designs of all three of these weapons varied significantly in the weight, length, and degree of curve that they had, ranging from a relatively straight blade with a hawkbill type curve at the end of the blade to a more sweeping curve. Alternately, some Sica were forged with a hard angle as opposed to the sweeping curve, but it's unclear from my research how prevalent that was throughout history. While the Rhomphaia was primarily attributed to the Kingdom of Thrace to the south of the Kingdom of Dacia, it is suggested from various accounts that these weapons were originally created by repurposing agricultural tools, and in fact the word Falx does roughly translate from Latin to the word scythe or sickle. Now, anthropological digs in modern-day Romania, which corresponds to the ancient kingdom of Dacia, in tombs of ancient Dacian warriors from the 2nd and 1st centuries did uncover that some bodies were buried with Sica. Now, this would suggest a deep connection to the weapon by the Dacian people, which is why it's typically associated with them as opposed to the Thracians. However, there are ancient accounts by Valerius Maximus of the attack on the Roman consul in 130 BC that the Thracian mercenaries used Sica to conduct the attack. So it's difficult to say which of the two peoples first invented the Sica, the Falx, or the Rhomphaia. Notably though, the Sica was purported to have been used heavily during the Dacian Wars, during the Roman invasion or conquering of the Dacian people, and it is even immortalized in the Column of Trajan, erected to commemorate the Roman Emperor Trajan's victory over the Kingdom of Dacia. Now this, along with other artistic depictions of Dacian people using Sica, did cement its at least historical significance with the people of Dacia and its adoption, so to speak, as the Dacian national weapon. However, it is worth noting that once the Dacian people were conquered by Rome, and Dacia became a Roman territory, use of the Sica did seem to either taper off or the Sica ceased to be used altogether. Now, perhaps these blades were outlawed by the Romans after conquering the Kingdom of Dacia because the unique forward curve of these blades was a terror in the hands of a Dacian or Thracian warrior. The Sica and the Falx were used to such a high degree of efficacy by the Dacian people that the Roman army actually changed the design of their helmets to better protect the sides of their face and their neck when fighting against the Dacian warriors. Now, the forward curvature of the blade was distinct when compared to other blades of the era, and it made it very difficult to predict the trajectory of the tip of the blade when trying to block an attack from a Dacian or Thracian warrior. As such, a block that would normally impede the arc of a straight blade wouldn't necessarily block the same attack using a Sica, Falx, or Rhomphaia. Now, these weapons were associated with absolutely vicious wounds by the Roman army, and, to make matters worse, they were especially suited for fighting against opponents who were equipped with a shield. The more hawkbill or curved or hooked variants of all three of these weapons especially suited for hooking shields, dragging them out of the way, and creating other openings during combat. Now, another oddity I found during my research when it comes to the Sica blades specifically is that they were forged with a blood groove or a fuller, as well as their decorative elements down only one side of the blade. Now, while the suggestion that a fuller is used to channel blood down the length of a blade is dubious in bladesmithing circles, they did seem to be called blood grooves in the texts that were cited by my sources. I don't know how to read ancient Roman, so I'm gonna have to take their word for it. It is very interesting and distinct that these fullers were only forged into one side of the blade. Most blades throughout history, if they include fullers, include them on both flat faces of a sword or a dagger. Now, the decorative elements on the Sica blade seem to suggest that there was some religious or sacrificial element associated with the Sica for the people of the Dacian kingdom. Many of the decorative elements included solar symbols, eagles, or various depictions of birds which were associated with a feeling or a sense of divinity, especially for the ancient Dacians. Now, this could also provide some explanation as to why the Sica and the Falx fell out of popularity or out of use after the fall of the Kingdom of Dacia, because all of the leaders were executed by the Roman military following their conquering, and as such, any religious connection that the people had with the Sica may have fell out of popularity. Now, regardless of its name or intended use, the placement of the fuller down only one side of the blade is distinct. However, it would be significantly easier for a smith to forge in a fullered or chiseled decorations on one side of the blade, because they would not need specialized tools in order to result in the fullers meeting on either side of the blade itself. One would either need some sort of guillotine tool that forces the fullers to meet up in the middle, or have some sort of support under the blade that would support directly in the fuller groove after forging in one side so that they can forge in the other. And doing this on one side of the blade would eliminate the need entirely, and as a result, would make it much more convenient for the smith to make. That being said, there is no historical suggestion that that was the reason that they put the fullers on one side of the blade. That's just an observation from a blacksmith's point of view as to a potential reason that might have existed. Okay, so that's gonna do it for today's video. If I missed anything or got anything wrong, please let me know down in the comments section, and please let me know what weapon you'd like to see next. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you want to support me in this channel further, please consider becoming an honorary striker on my Patreon. Link is in the description below the video, and as always, keep on rocking.